Hello everyone! Today I wanted to make a video about French and more specifically about how native speakers write French. So if you are learning French or if you are a native speaker of French, you will know that French is notoriously very difficult to write. And in this video I hope to demonstrate to you how as a native speaker I managed to write French with, let's say, 99% accuracy. A lot of people think that native speakers don't really have explicit knowledge of grammar, but I want to show that in the example of French, it's actually not the case. And I believe that as a native speaker, if you want to write French accurately, you need to have some explicit knowledge and understanding of grammar. Otherwise, it's very, very difficult to write accurately. What we are going to do today is I'm going to correct a text which I found online. It's a random text and it contains a lot of mistakes, spelling and grammar, and I'm going to try to correct them as well as possible. And while I do that, I'm going to also tell you what is the thought process and what are the decisions and things I have to think about when I'm writing French to reach the highest accuracy possible. So here is the text we are going to work on today. It's not a very difficult text. I think the level is between A2, B1, so high, beginner, low, intermediate. The point was for me to use something that was not too difficult to make my explanations a bit easier. But if you wanted me to work on a more difficult text in the future, do let me know in the comment section and then I'll see what I can do. I hope I will not forget any mistakes, but I have to tell you that even as a native speaker, it is absolutely normal to make spelling mistakes. French is a super difficult language to write because of the spelling and the grammar. And if you are a beginner, do not feel bad if you make mistakes. It is a pain for everyone, to be honest. I'm not sure why they had to make French so difficult to write, but anyway, that's not the point of this video, to criticize French language, but let's crack on. So, the first sentence, so Michel invite sa mère à dîner. So here, we would want an accent here because what we have is a passé composé. So this is subject, the auxiliary, and the past participle. Invite would not make sense. That wouldn't be grammatically correct because invite is the present tense. So, Michel a invité sa mère à dîner. Okay, looks good. Il remarque que Julie, la colocataire de Michel, est très jolie. So here I have two mistakes. So first of all, it should be Jolie with an E because if you look back, we are talking about Julie and Julie is female, therefore the adjective, so the words that qualify her, will be feminine in the feminine form. Then here we have an accent. So très. So accents in French are not too problematic often. In some cases it could be ambiguous, but très in that case is quite clear. Even without an accent, I instinctively read it as très anyway, so it wouldn't change the pronunciation. And the little tip to sound more natural in French is that jolie usually is not used to talk about men. I'm not sure why, but I guess it's like in English where you wouldn't say a pretty man, you would say a handsome man usually, I think. The tendency is the same in French. So we might say beau instead for men. Et elle tente de savoir si son fils et elle ne sont que des colocataires. So tente here is a spelling mistake because the verb is tante with an E. So interestingly enough, it wouldn't change the pronunciation if you wrote it with an A, but tante with an A is aunt, like a family member, so it's not the same thing. Tante with an A is a noun, and here we have a verb which is spelled with an E. So elle tente, the ending is fine because it's elle, it's third person singular. De savoir si son fils et elle ne sont que des colocataires. So sont here, there's an issue. There needs to be a T because here it's not sont like the possessive, so like her or his, but it's the verb be. So être, so sont des colocataires. So there should be a T, even though they do sound exactly the same. Et son fils lui affirme que Julie et lui ne sont que des amis. Okay, so spelling mistake. So affirmer, the verb is two Fs. And then, ne sont que des amis, so here we have a gender issue because what happens is that in French we're a bit sexist, but when you have a subject which is masculine and feminine, which is here fils and Julie, the masculine will be what prevails, if you will. So here you wouldn't have an E. Otherwise, if you have an E, it would sound like fils is female, but then fils is male, so it's a bit confusing. So here it would be ne sont que des amis. I hope that makes sense. Do ask questions in the comment section if there's anything I'm talking about that's unclear. So, une semaine plus tard, spelling mistake, there should be a D. which is not pronounced. We don't pronounce the D, but we still write it. Julie dit à Michel. So D is the wrong ending because D would be used for je or tu form, so I and you, singular. And here Julie is third person, it's she. So it's with a T. Okay. Depuis que ta mère est venue dîner, so here you always have to think about your subject in French, or who is doing the action of the verb, or who is being described. And here the action of the verb is related to mère, and here takes a ni, because there's a rule in the passé composé, which is that if the auxiliary, so être here, is used, then the past participle should have number and gender agreement. So if here it was the verb avoir, then you wouldn't change the past participle. It's a really weird rule. I don't know why we do that, but I know it is the rule. Mon téléphone a disparu. So same thing. So here you have to consider the gender of the verb here. So téléphone is masculine. If you did know that it was a masculine word, then here mon would be an indication of that. If this word was feminine, then it would be ma. But here it's mon, so mon téléphone. A disparu. So here there's no e because téléphone is masculine, and we only put an e if the thing we're talking about or the person we're talking about is feminine. So next line, je vais lui envoyer un petit mot. So je vais is problematic here because if you're using je, I can only think of one exception, which is the simple future. Je will always take an S. I can't think of any examples where it doesn't. Well, actually, I spoke a bit too quickly because there is one exception, which is the verb avoir, to have, and in the present tense, it's conjugated as j'ai for the first person singular, and it doesn't take an S. So, sorry, I spoke too quickly. So, je always goes with an S, always, always, always. Je vais lui envoyer un petit mot, okay, that's good. So, répond Michel, okay, qui écrit « Chère maman ». Okay, chère maman, so chère here is problematic. So chère, not expensive, but dear, like dear Patrick, dear mom, or whatever. Here we'll have to agree with the person that is dear to you in that context. So chère would be actually chère, like this. Chère, like it was written, would be for singular masculine. Je ne dis pas que tu as pris le téléphone. Je ne dis pas. Again, same thing with the verb. So D takes an S here, because you have je. Que tu as pris le téléphone, et je ne dis pas non plus que tu ne l'as pas pris, mais elle est introuvable depuis ta dernière visite. So this is a typical learner mistake that I often see when I correct my students, is that sometimes they lose track of who is or what is the thing that we are talking about. And here, because we are talking about the phone, you say elle here, that sounds confusing, because if on the one hand you have something that's masculine and then suddenly out of the blue something feminine comes up, it's confusing. The speaker might think, are you talking about like a feminine object or a feminine person suddenly? And it's confusing because it's not obvious from the context. So elle potentially could be understood as elle, the mom, as opposed to the phone, elle, Julie, maybe. So you have to make sure that all the words that are used to describe the thing you're talking about do match the gender and the number. So here is il est. Okay. Introuvable. Depuis ta dernière visite. So here's the wrong accent. And voila. I think that's it. Oh no, there's one more here. I missed this one. So here, semaine should be feminine. So unfortunately, French is a gendered language, which is tricky because there's no real rule for like what gender a word is. Often you just have to learn it off by heart. I know there are some rules of like probability rules, which says that if the word ends in a certain syllable or letter, it tends to be more feminine or masculine. I don't really like that rule because I feel like it can lead you to make mistakes because there's always going to be a word or even many words that don't follow the rules. So it doesn't kind of work in my opinion, but overall, you just need to learn the gender off by heart. And it's important as well to know the right gender because if some words will have a different meaning if you change the gender. So a typical example is un livre is a book, but une livre is a pound, like English currency. So it's important sometimes, to not get it wrong. Usually, if you make a mistake on the gender, it's not a big deal because except from a few words, most words in French only have one gender. So if you change the gender, it'll still be the same word. It would just be the wrong gender. So people should be able to understand you, but natives will know that it's a mistake, something that we notice. And I would also add that when you're writing, it's very important to know the gender of the thing you're talking about, and because otherwise you cannot spell the adjectives properly, and there's going to be lots of little mistakes like that. So it is definitely important. And if you do not know the gender, like me, sometimes it happens if there's a word that maybe I haven't really used, or maybe it's a kind of complex word, just look it up. Just go on a dictionary, look for the M or F letter, which will be masculine or feminine. That's usually how they abbreviate it, and then just learn it like that. It's fine to always check. Sometimes I will too, if it's a sort of an obscure word, I guess. So I hope you found this video helpful. I hope that gave you a bit more of an insight as to how me as a native speaker, I would sort of think about when I'm writing French, and all the things that you have to bear in mind when writing French. If you like this video, then consider subscribing, give it a few thumbs up, and I will see you in a future video. Bye!